Okay, right, Mark, so if you'd like to begin.
Thank you.
The evening.
Right. This is the Ballad of the One-Eyed Driver. Alexander's left eye went a-missing in an accident. Details too painful to relate, though it was not of recent date. And lest his face make all recoil, his skilful sister with much toil constructed in her workshop fast a perfect replica of glass. Alexander's old optician tested him and deemed the vision in his right eye 20/20, adding, but festina lente, since your left eye cannot see, your vision cannot be 3D. Also your visual angle's low. So please be careful how you go, and don't be prey to self-deception. You have little depth perception. Sometimes Alex's friends were jocular, teasing him for being monocular, but they never got him riled. At their banter he just smiled, and lived as normally as a man with but a simple optic can, insisting in particular he'd go on driving in his car. He had a license, was insured, and though his vision wasn't cured by fitting a glass eye, he'd drive as long as he remained alive. Behind the wheel he took great care, and never hurried anywhere, but took his time and wouldn't rush when frantic followers tried to push his car's rear end. Took no affright from raging horns and flashing lights. Boy racers, you may do your worst. For me, it's always safety first, said Alexander. I'll drive slow wherever I might choose to go. Taking his customary pains on narrow, twisting Shropshire lanes one day, he sadly shook his head as a Ferrari past him sped on a blind bend. And then, alas, the inevitable came to pass. The sports car, doing 83, went nose first straight into a tree. The impact wrote it off, it's true, and wrote its occupant off too. Alec went straightway to the wreck, opened the door so he could check the driver's pulse. It was not the least use, for he was thoroughly deceased. Then Alec boggled with surprise on noting that the victim's eyes almost exactly matched his own. He glanced around. He was alone. He pocketed his eye of glass, then, emulating a top-class ophthalmic surgeon, out he prized the leftmost of the corpse's eyes and put it in his empty socket. Then took the glass eye from his pocket and swiftly used it to replace the one nicked from the driver's face. As we all know, it couldn't work. Only an idiotic jerk would think such auto-transplantation could affect the reparation of a gross visual deficit. But Alec didn't doubt one whit the action would restore his sight. Mirabile dictu, he was right. Now, I've no idea why, against all medical and common sense, his sight was instantly restored, but evidence can't be ignored. Of limited vision, he was free. He could see clearly in 3D. He danced for joy. Then, feeling fine, at last he dialed 999. The constable was very kind to Alec. Hoped he wouldn't mind making a statement clear and brief how the Ferrari came to grief. Alec obliged. He shook his head, said, what a shame to end up dead through racing in a racing car. The wonder is he got so far, replied the cop. Came all the way from Glasgow earlier today. How he accomplished such a drive, 300 miles he stayed alive, we're quite unable to surmise. How could he see with two glass eyes?
Thank you, Mark.
I think that's very good indeed, that.
Yeah, thank you.
Does have shades of Dominic Cummings, though.
Well, yes. Do you realise a wonderful thing? Two Fridays ago, it was Friday the 13th of all dates. And on that date, I thought evil is vanishing from the world. The coronavirus R value had decreased. Peter Sutcliffe had died. Dominic Cummings had left Downing Street. All on the same day.
Now, I've forgotten to already write that one down. What was it called?
The Ballad of the One-Eyed Driver.
Thank you.
I love the punchline, Mark.
Okay, so Linda.
Okay. I came across a new magazine recently called Up Magazine, and at the very last minute sent them a poem, which fortunately they took. This is it. You know the saying, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Well, this is the truth and nothing but the truth, but it wasn't the whole truth. The first time I could have kissed, but didn't, was at least in part your fault. You knew how to dance, I didn't, though the tune did seem more like music than a dad band should. The shift Mum made swirled in its soft satin, flames of orange gold skimming my hips, tighter with every move a smooth, fine denier leg could make, sparking me as I leaned in for the turn. I don't remember anything you said as we walked home. I continued awkward, but night air and stars were there. Outside my back door, we stood still, and you asked, "Do you usually get kissed?" And I said, "No." And so we didn't. What I didn't say was this was my first dance, the first time anyone had walked all the way home or asked. I didn't have a chance. I didn't have the sense to tell the whole truth or one small, rewarding lie.
Thank you, Linda.
Are we allowed to clap?
Yes. Some of you are muted and some of you aren't, but you can clap. Did you have anything else you wanted to read in this part, Linda, or?
Oh, I just brought one for the first half and one for the second.
Okay, we'll keep it. We'll. That's probably the best. Probably the way to do it. Yeah. And what was that one called? The
And nothing but.
And nothing but. Okay, Phil, you're next.
Right, wow. I thought we'd been last in, I'd be last out.
No, I had to do it like this because this is the order it went down on here is the order you all replied to my email.
Well, this is I'll get my Trump poem out of the way, if that's all right.
I hope it doesn't trump my Trump poem.
I could have Trump poem as well.
Yeah, let's get them out of the way quickly. It's called Bleak Thoughts Upon Its Sonnet.
Sorry, it's what, sorry?
Bleak Thoughts Upon It Sonnet.
Okay, thank you very much.
If Trump should win, think only this of me, that there's some corner of a Cheshire field where I shall sit and mourn beneath a tree, for postal votes will surely be repealed, and democratic freedoms wither fast. This man, who disregards all truth and facts, he cares for no one but himself. The past is not his story, so false news distracts. Our planet's future hovers teetering. Both ice caps melt, that's just collateral woes. He'll keep ignoring, go on tweetering, whilst polar bears drown under melting flows. Be great, America, and give us hope. Please, please don't re-elect this awful dope. It's a little bit not as topical as it was.
That's the thing, isn't it, at the moment? Everything is changing so quickly. You can't keep up with it.
Get it out of the way first.
Oh, thank you very much.
I have to keep it for 4 years' time.
What was that, Linda?
But I hope he doesn't have to store it for 4 years' time.
Well said, Lindy.
Next on the list is Dave.
Right. I'm very conscious of the fact that I'm sitting in front of an august assembly of very highly literate people, literary figures. And what I'm going to read is nothing to do with literature. It's just assembly of aimless thoughts at a time when we are all in a state of lockdown. My brain has also gotten into a state of lockdown. And as I said earlier, I'm struggling to write anything creative. So I thought, for a change, let me just put a body to my aimless rants. So the title of my rant is Eating Out, Anatomical Dissection. Like eating out, especially to numb the pain of lockdown? Who doesn't? I like it too, but in extreme moderation. Let me qualify. I like it only as a distraction, and only on those days when the idleness of being at home becomes so heavy that it starts to feel like a millstone round my neck. Under normal circumstances, I would much rather have at home a couple of guests whom I am genuinely interested in, and I would be happy to lend my precious ears to, provided they reciprocate by being good listeners. The number is very critical. Anything more than 3 is a crowd. People at our age are brimming with information and itching to splurge out. Unfortunately, the information that they carry in their heads emanate from the same sources. Information overload can be quite distressing and can often lead to dire need to discharge on others. Let me now dissect the whole experience of eating out into its individual components, beginning from the act of planning, then that of the journey, then the meetup, the chit-chat, and finally the actual act of eating. Even if you choose to ignore the preliminaries and just focus on the final act, you will find that it can still be further dissected into 3 more lower denominators. The sight of the food being laid out, the act of chewing, and finally the journey of the bolus from the lips to the back of the throat, a colossal distance of 6 inches, ending in swallowing. Needless to say, after all this paraphernalia, once the bolus has gone past the pharynx, the gravity will take over. Apart from abdominal distension, nothing else will reach the conscious level. Satiety will ensue, leading to temporary drowsiness. Blood will flow away from the brain to the intestine, and inevitably, the brain will suffer a short period of relative slowdown. To labor my point home, all this fuss, in essence, is about the journey of a bolus of food for a distance of only 6 inches. Nothing more. Eating out to me is therefore too transparent. It is too transparent to hold out any special charm. I would prefer to stay at home and cook my own. On an average day, I tend to work out a mental plan of my day's menu as my first act as soon as I open my eyes. This allows an anticipatory build-up of hope and expectation, which can be a welcome relief from the usual post-retirement morning blues. I would prefer the food to be cooked in front of me, right from its ingredients, allowing the aroma to waft around and tickle my gustatory receptors. I would then ensure that it is served piping hot. Nothing is worse than food that has gone cold and then warmed in the microwave. I have also never felt, while eating out, the need for any extra frill, as long as the ambience is agreeable and the minimal standards of hygiene are adhered to. The much hyped extras in terms of drapery, cutlery, serenade, or the background of an elitist crowd do not add any extra value to my experience. In fact, at times it can be overpowering, sometimes even get onto my nerves. On those moments, suddenly the comforts of my sitting room and the warm glow of my television screen start beckoning me to get back home. The reasons are self-evident. I am an introvert person to a deadly fault, and my traits are so predictable. There are only a handful of occasions where I can honestly say that I have been really happy. Social chit-chat is an art, and unlike my wife, who is so adept, I'm yet to grow into it. It is too demanding for my attention and too overpowering for my senses. I often wonder, how can people bring themselves down to listening to others in a merry-go-round of pointless exchanges? I have trained myself to be my own best friend, and have made best use of the nature has endowed on me. 2 hours of my brain talking and listening to each other, almost in an uninterrupted way. I wish I could articulate like Carl Pilkington. I'm trying to train myself to capture these dialogues in words and sentences, which in course of time will stay behind as my legacy. My mother had always lived a sedentary life. She loved looking out aimlessly through the window and see the world pass her by. I have inherited genes, but my window is a wide television screen with its extensions, Netflix and Amazon. The sights, sounds, and colors of anything and everything, anywhere and everywhere, near or distant, can enter my head at any time of my choosing, without having to part with any of my home comforts. Eating out is a compromise on my comforts. Why should I stretch myself to join others' merry-go-round chit-chats? I raise both my thumbs to commend those who like going out and keep the wheel of economy moving. But I'm an oddball, and I'm quite happy to stay that way until I'm consumed with my next urge triggered by lockdown.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem, if I press unmute, or it doesn't seem to make any difference. And I think quite a few people are muted. So, but there is applause there. It's just that you can't hear it.
You can only mute us, Simone. You can't unmute us. You can only mute us. We have to unmute ourselves.
Linda knows.
I've been zooming a lot.
So I can only.
You can mute all of us in one go.
Yes, I can see that. But why does it then say I can see at the bottom it says mute all, but then it's got a button to say unmute all. So
because you used to be able to do that on Zoom, right. But it's changed because for various confidentiality reasons. Right. So it's no longer possible to unmute everyone.
Yeah, which is why we ended up confused, because we knew that, we've done it before, and then makes sense now. Hence the reason why I don't want to go anywhere near that button. Dave, I just missed out the second bit of your title, eating out and or
anatomical dissection.
Dissection
or dissection.
Doctor talk. Right, okay, thank you very much.
I enjoyed it.
Well, yes, 2 doctors in the house. Yvette, we'll come to yours in the second half. Tony, you're next on here.
Well, I've got a not very good poem, but I wrote it a few days ago, and it may hopefully bring a smile. It's called an Annus Horribilis. This year has been a time of comings and goings, of mayhem and mess and toings and froings. Truckloads of cash have been poured down the drain, and much has been done that appears quite insane. Millions were paid to buy kits that were flawed, and rules and restrictions were imposed, but ignored by those close to power who thought it true that they were worth more than me and than you. Fat cats made fortunes brokering deals, while ministers spoke against providing meals for children officially classed as deprived. One law for the rich, that can't be denied. Truth were a casualty time and again, as policy and lockdown changed on a whim. One moment they promised a bright new tomorrow. Next day it was a tale of doom and of sorrow. In Russia, in China, Brazil and Iran, false claims are made daily by dishonest men. We don't have the virus. It's no worse than flu. Nobody's dying. Don't make it a do. And leading the world in this field of fake news was a madman in the White House who tweeted his views. His credibility sank to a spectacular low, and soon, thank the Lord, the cretin must go. This Annus Horribilis is nearing its end, and maybe next year our situation will mend. Vaccines have been found, which I think hold a key to make life much better for everybody. And that's it.
Thank you, Tony. Yeah, it's difficult to keep up, isn't it? With all the changes.
Well, I mean, in relation to that one, you can score it out of 10, and then you can put in brackets a little word, completely reasonable and practical, or crap for short.
We've got, I thought you were going then, Anne. So I can unmute Anne. Is that right? You're muted, Anne.
Am I?
Yeah, oh, that's it.
No, I'm unmuted, yeah.
So did you want to read, you've got a little thing to read?
Yeah, this was just, I haven't written anything recently, but this is from memoirs, really. It was a humorous anecdote that we're writing from my nursing background. So this was night duty as a student nurse. After my 4 weeks on days, I was assigned to night duty on a gynecological ward. Looking after the patients was the easy part. The difficulties arose from the visitors in the night. Cockroaches were frequent nocturnal visitors, which fortunately patients were usually unaware of. Reaching into the cutlery drawer would often entail an encounter with a cockroach, which was out for the evening. Other times you would hear a crackling sound as you squashed them underfoot. A number of nursing auxiliaries who worked permanent nights would play cockroach races. The larger ones were chosen to race up and down the corridor against each other. Small bets were levied just to add to the fun. Other less welcome visitors were mice. This particular ward had a resident mouse that had the same routine every night. It waited until the middle of the night before running from its daytime hiding place across the corridor and into the sluice. That is where it would stay until morning. This meant that every time anyone asked for a bedpan, the mouse would run between my legs on its journey around the sluice. I put up with it for 2 weeks before deciding that the mouse would have to go. I dreaded anyone asking for a bedpan from 4 a.m. onwards, so a cunning plan was hatched. This entailed hijacking the mouse as it journeyed from its hiding place across the corridor towards the sluice. A trap was duly set up. This consisted of placing some cheese on the corridor, which we hoped the mouse wouldn't be able to resist. What the mouse didn't know, obviously, was that next to the cheese was a swab soaked in ether. As the mouse nibbled on the cheese, we placed a glass dome over it, and voila, the mouse became unconscious. The night porter was then sent for to dispose of the mouse. The plan was so successful that I repeated it on other wards throughout my training.
I remember having a good laugh when I first read that one, and I thought, just imagine that. And what I could really picture is the nurses doing the cockroaches. I mean, yes, absolutely.
Now I could follow that one up with one of my stories that Anne's already read, or I could go with the Trump one. I don't know. What should I do? Pippa, have you got anything to read? Is Pippa eating? She's on mute. You're on mute.
Sorry, I'm just a spectator.
Right, okay, right. Do you want to, have you muted yourself back? Yeah, so what to go for? Right, I'll just have a quick thing of water. I wanted to capture a bit of the lockdown, what was going off. So I decided I'd got two things here, and then I decided at about 5 o'clock that I'd have a go at doing a poem, like you do. So it's a little bit, it's rough. Just needs a little bit of rounding off. But the trouble is, if I don't do it tonight, it's not going to be apt next time we meet. So it's got a couple of digs in there for our favourite ex-president. So what I was doing was just writing down news headlines that were in November, trying to do something on that basis. So remember the 5th of November. Remember the 5th of November, the start of national lockdown 2, with many public-facing businesses shut, causing again massive losses of revenue. In America, it was the presidential election, and Biden looking like he could win. Trump then insisting there's been a fraud. He's never going to take losing on the chin. Trump throws his toys out of the pram and tweets us to some selective silence. Biden is declared the winner, as demonstrating by voters ends in violence. A COVID-19 vaccine from Pfizer is revealed, giving hope to nations worldwide. It needs to be stored at -80, which might be an issue when it's supplied. Days later, an AstraZeneca vaccine is unveiled, which is much easier to store. Worldwide immunisation programmes are imminent, hopefully keeping COVID at bay forevermore. Friday the 13th brought us the news that Peter Sutcliffe had died of COVID-19. Final closures for the families affected by his crimes. He was convicted in 81 of murdering 13. I'm a Celebrity fans weren't left disappointed, as the celebs headed to a castle in Wales. A little bit colder than the Australian jungle, but Ant and Dec are on top form as always. The Arcadia Group goes into administration, putting 13,000 jobs at stake. Philip Green's greed did him no favours, and making him a Sir was possibly a mistake. So as November 2020 draws to a close and the Christmas plans are announced, household bubbles of 3 are allowed. Let's pray that COVID doesn't leave us trounced. At the end, Krista, that was a little bit gloomy, but...
You know, the one thing about the American election, which really blew me away in one sense, was that Donald Trump had more people voted for him than any other candidate in election history, apart from Joe Biden, which means more people voted for Trump than voted for Reagan, more people voted for Trump than voted for JFK, more people voted for Trump who voted for Obama. And what that's about America, I just don't know. But he had 70 odd million people, thinking he was, God's gift to humanity, and I just don't understand that.
Yeah, they do. They love him. I remember Chris and I were on a cruise when he was getting voted in 4 years ago, and we'd sort of dared to sort of laugh.
Yes.
We're like, oh, because it was quite obvious he thought it was, just amazing, best thing since sliced bread. So that concludes the first half, and isn't that perfectly timed?
3:30.